Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to explain the Court of Session's decision today, which was adjudicating on whether or not Boris Johnson was complying with the Benn Act and what they would do about it if he were not, and the ramifications for the government as well. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, then please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So, another day and another of Dominic Cummings' plans failed. Effectively, there were two decisions coming from the judges at the Court of Session today. So the first of them was around whether or not Boris Johnson had complied with the Benn Act. Now, in the first case, I'm going to have to say I got something wrong yesterday. I can't remember if I said it on this channel or on Patreon. I have an idea it was just on Patreon. However, people were saying that what Boris Johnson had done was just photocopy the Benn Act and send that off, obviously unsigned. Now, I didn't think he had. I thought it had been mocked up to look like that, but it looked to be a different font to me. So I was wrong on that one. It was another act of petulance. Boris Johnson didn't even, because the letter, he didn't have to write the letter himself. It would have been written by a civil servant and just presented to him, at which point, if he was like well behaved, he would just sign it and off it would go. Now, in the event, he still didn't need to sign it and he still didn't need to even handle it. Just say to Mark, said, well, yeah, send it off, please. So, no, just in a final act of petulance, they did just photocopy it. So I'll accept that one. But the question really was, has he complied with the Benn Act or sought to frustrate it? Because the whole point of the Benn Act was to get that extension request off, or part of the point of it was. And, you know, I said yesterday that as far as I was concerned, he'd complied with it for the simple reason that Donald Tusk, the president of the EU, had accepted it. And it was quite easy for him to accept it, because you might imagine, okay, if you've just got this thing, it's a photocopy and it's sent off unsigned, how does he know it's from the Prime Minister? Well, there's two reasons. One, he sent along two other letters with it, I assume all part of the same package. They were both signed. Now, neither of those letters contradicted the desire for an extension. They basically said that it wasn't Boris Johnson's request, it was Parliament's request. No one cares. Donald Tusk doesn't care. That's the bottom line. And the other thing is that Boris Johnson also phoned up the EU president to say the letter was on the way. So it's quite clear to the EU Council that the request for an extension is genuine. And the judges took the same view. They said, yeah, it's fine. It's been, and now for the same reasons. They said that the extension request has been sent off and it has been accepted. So there's no need to really do anything at that point. Now, this was bad for the government. It sounds like a victory for the government, but it's actually not, because Dominic Cummings wanted to have another delay by taking it to the Supreme Court by way of an appeal. He wanted the Scottish judges to go, ooh, and for him to go, right, we disagree, we're going to appeal to the Supreme Court. Lots of time wasting there. But no, the Scottish judges have said, what's the problem? It was sent off, it's been accepted. That's all the Benn Act really wanted him to do at this point. So then there was the second part of it. So the representative for the government stood up and said, right, the Prime Minister has complied with the Benn Act, he's sent off the extension. That should be an end of it. You should just decide, right, case closed basically, nothing more to be done. But there is more to be done, because the Benn Act doesn't just stop at the request for an extension, because they know that Boris Johnson is tricksy. So what should happen is, should the EU decide to offer an extension, which they won't do anytime soon, but hopefully at the end of this week, the latest start of next week, otherwise I'll start to get worried. The Benn Act requires for Boris Johnson to immediately accept the extension, whatever it is. We have asked for an extension up to the 31st of January. But like President Macron of France has been saying recently, oh, do you know what? I can't be bothered with all these constant extensions. Can we not just give them a 2-year extension and just leave it? And they may well do that, or 1 year, or whatever it happens to be. 2 years, fine. 99 years, 1,000 years. But whatever it is, Boris Johnson, regardless of his own personal views, has to accept it. And then he has to bring it before Parliament within 2 days. Now, you can see here the scope for delaying tactics, particularly if the EU Council only make this offer a few days before the Brexit deadline? Because he's allowed 2 days delay before bringing it to Parliament for a vote. So what the government wanted the judges to do was basically call it all over, so that if he did then not comply with the Benn Act later on, someone else would have to bring it before court. There'd have to be more hearings, all the rest of it. That would all eat up time. And maybe he'd be able to take us out of the EU, albeit unlawfully, on October the 31st. But it makes no difference whether it's unlawful in British law. If the EU decide that it's all fine and dandy in EU law, then that's what's happened. So the judges have said, no, we're not going to call an end to it here. We're just going to go back into our box. They didn't actually say that. They don't live in a box. But they're metaphorically just going to go back into their box and wait and see. And as far as they're concerned, they can keep doing this up until October the 31st. Because if Boris Johnson is given an offer by the EU Council and he doesn't accept it, they're going to pop out of their metaphorical box and clonk him on the head with their gavel. Do they use those? Is that a myth? I don't know. And if he does accept it, but he seems to be taking his time on bringing it before Parliament, same thing. They'll pop out of their box, clonk him on the head, and there you are. So Boris Johnson hasn't won there either. He now has the law literally breathing down his neck, and we already know he will comply with the law, albeit to what he thinks is the minimum level necessary. Fine, whatever, don't matter. But he will comply. The threat of any action against him is sufficient. So the fact that these judges are now basically saying, well, look, we're just on vigil until the Benn Act has been fully exhausted, is not good news for him. And it means that Dominic Cummings has lost another potential avenue to a no-deal Brexit. So he now basically needs Parliament to vote it through, albeit pretending to vote through a deal or something like that. So hopefully that explains the court decision today and how it is not at all good news for the government. Hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.